Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the WireTap. It's been a little bit since we've been with you. We had some technical issues with our last episode that we were going to do right after the debate, but here we are and we're glad that you're joining us today. So we have a bunch of stories spanning about the last 5 days that we want to get to and we want to address. First of all, we're going to address a little bit of the debate. Logan was all over that. I was live tweeting during it. So we have that analysis coming up. We also have some stories about Antifa. As you've all probably heard by now, there was a big riot protest that occurred in Portland over the weekend. So we want to address that. Andy Ngo was the most significant figure who fell victim to Antifa. He was attacked and targeted and beaten up pretty badly. So Antifa has reared its ugly head again in American political discussions, so we will talk more about that. The Supreme Court handed down rulings on the census and on gerrymandering last week, and they weren't quite what we were expecting. We'll have more on that coming up. And also, a federal judge has blocked Trump from using military funds to build the border wall like he was planning on doing. So we'll have more on that and more coming up on this edition of the WireTap. Hello everyone, my name is JD.
And this is Logan.
And this is our second edition of the WireTap Podcast, and we want to thank all of you for joining us today in whatever medium you are, either on YouTube or SoundCloud. So, Logan has all of the debate analysis that you could ever want. We were sitting there, we watched both nights. It was excruciatingly painful. I was live tweeting during it, so I had a lot going on in my feed, a lot that I was looking at, just live reactions from people. Logan sat there, and you can't really see his desk, but it is littered with papers and notes front and back that he took. Basically everything that you could possibly want over the course of the debate. So we'll let him take off here.
Well, I guess we'll just do a quick rundown of, obviously everyone in the media has stolen my analysis that Kamala Harris was the winner of the debate. That's what everyone said, and all the polls have come out to where she shot up now 6 or 7 points, something like that.
Yeah.
Sanders fell, and I actually did some research on Sanders after the debate, and I thought, why does he always just do the same thing wherever he is, the same bullet points he hits every debate or every speech? That's because over his entire Senate career, he has only sponsored one bill.
And wasn't that, it was a bill whenever he was in the state house, wasn't it? Or whenever he was a state official.
Yeah.
And wasn't it over, like, changing the name of something? I think so.
I think so.
But
it didn't change America.
In terms of federal government, activism or any kind of proposals or anything. Yeah, Bernie Sanders is a no-hitter. He's not had any of that. The only thing was a bill that was passed for renaming something. I can't remember what it was. In memorial of somebody.
You never know. So
that was it. It's so insignificant that I can't even remember.
So honestly, there's no more real analysis I feel like I can almost give than what you've probably seen the last week. Dylan thought that Pete Buttigieg was the winner of the debate.
Right after I felt that he was the winner of it, it turns out that's not really been the case as time has gone on.
He's raised $24 million since then.
I mean, yeah, he's raised a lot of money since that point, but in terms of polling, it just hasn't reflected that. But as we said before, polls don't really mean a whole lot. Joe Biden dropped, I think, a full 10 points. He dropped about 10 points.
Pretty significant.
From before any of the debates started to now.
That being said, he still has a sizable lead.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, even though he's dropped 10 points, he had 10 points to give up, quite frankly. He had more than enough points. He's still more than in the lead. and there's nobody even close behind him, as you still have another 24 people, or 23 people, running for president.
And I feel like after this debate, Harris just proved that she is possibly a better candidate than Sanders, or is a bigger threat to Biden than Sanders will ever be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've said this for a long time, that Sanders will never get anywhere. Not in this Democratic Party at the moment. Sanders is never going to get anywhere. He will never win the presidency. He will never get to lose the presidency because the Democrat Party will never allow him to get the nomination. Whenever Bernie Sanders gets the nomination for the Democrat Party at that point officially becomes the radical, extremist party that we've been talking about for a long time. Not us specifically, but just conservatives in general. I've been talking about for a long time that they are. And they're starting to come out of the woodwork. And the decades and the years on top of years of extremist far left policy have finally come to roost in the likes of Ocasio-Cortez and all of these others that you're starting to see pop up. Ocasio-Cortez is just the easiest example of this because she's the most prominent. She's the most in the media, that kind of stuff. She's just the easiest, most recallable example at the moment. But there's others, not even at the federal level, but at the state levels. And they're starting to come up more and more and more, and they're starting to become more extremely common.
So, as many quotes as I could have pulled from the two nights, I came down one quote that has not received much attention by anyone, and maybe it's because it was said by the two nobodies. Hickenlooper started off his statement by saying that we need to reform ICE, and I say, well, all of this is paraphrased, but it has the main point. He said that we need to reform ICE, and I thought, wow, somebody that doesn't want to abolish ICE. And then he went on in his statement to say that we are putting children in cages and putting them up for adoption.
Yeah, that's a point that I've not heard much of anybody touch, and I guess it was just because the debate as a whole was just so terrible. And at that point, your mind was just numb to all of it. But yeah, he literally said that we were putting children up for adoption, that we were taking from these families, and that ICE was taking. That America is basically the biggest perpetrator of adoption in anywhere because we're just taking these children and then putting them up for sale. Like, I don't know how you refute that because there's just no possible way to even begin to counter research that, because it's like saying the sky is green. It's like, all you do is you look up. Like, there's no reason for scientific analysis to disprove that because you just look up. Well, all you have to do is just look at it and that's not happening.
The sweet Marianne Williamson chimed in off his point next, and she said that we are kidnapping these children and we are chronologically harming them mentally, and that we are having state-sponsored crimes of kidnapping and, I guess, mental abuse.
I mean, is it kidnapping, like, whenever kids go to juvenile detention? I mean, is that kidnapping, I guess?
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidnapping somebody whenever they go to prison? Is that state-sponsored?
You're kidnapping them from their family?
Yeah, I mean, is that state-sponsored kidnapping, state-sponsored crimes?
They talk about illegal immigrants
because
being
it's
torn
what they're
apart.
Doing. And it just goes back to what we've said before, that they do not believe in borders. And it's been said for years on top of years, and it's blatantly clear, it's not a new revelation to anybody who pays attention, that the Democrats want open borders. It's so obvious. It's so clear. It's not even a new novel concept. You can't say, oh, wow, that's amazing. I never thought of it like that.
21st century idea.
It's so obvious. It's a 20th century idea. Okay, you could have seen this in the 90s. But They really do not believe in any sort of border whatsoever, and they believe that America is available for just everyone to come and be a part of. They really do. They believe that everyone is entitled to be in America.
They talk about these immigrant families being ripped apart. We see the same thing in American families.
Yeah.
The father commits a murder.
Yeah.
He goes to jail. He doesn't see his children.
You commit a crime, and that's part of the punishment. You commit a crime, and you go into solitude and confinement. That's part of your punishment. That's part of the consequences of your action. And the Democrats are the party of no consequences. They want no consequences whatsoever. You cross the border illegally, you don't go to jail. You don't get fined or penalized in any sort of way. You get your driver's license. You get health care sponsored by the government. You get college tuition benefits. You live a promiscuous lifestyle. You can get an abortion.
And I don't even think...
It's just the party of no consequences.
I don't even think people are really even looking at the whole healthcare aspect, because everybody thinks of South American people. What about somebody in London who hates the socialized medicine there and tries to say, I need asylum from London because I can't get the proper healthcare there, so I'm going to travel on a plane to the United States, overstay my visa, whatever they apply for, to continue to stay in the United States so that they can apply for the healthcare.
Yeah. And speaking of healthcare, you had a quote from Joe Biden, and just in short, he said that we will build on Obamacare. That was one of his quotes, that we will build on Obamacare.
And we'll make it an exchange program to essentially begin Medicare.
Yeah,
for all.
For Medicare for all. What was said 4 years ago or so, 4 or 5 years ago, from the grand, architect of Obamacare, I can't remember his name offhand, and what was revealed that he said and that he admitted when in a public speaking event.
That
Obamacare was just the pathway to single-payer health care. And that it was basically designed to fail, to bring America closer to a single-payer healthcare system. And Joe Biden, the lovable goofball Joe Biden, middle-class Joe, comes out and basically says that exact same thing, just in different words.
Yep.
That you will use Obamacare to get to Medicare for all. Which it sounds a lot less scary coming from him than it does from Bernie Sanders. Because Bernie Sanders makes you think that your world is just about to end and that the Gestapo are going to come and strip you of all your freedoms and send you to a camp to live in, America 2.0. Joe Biden just seems so inept and stupid that you feel that it can't possibly go right anyway.
So it's just going to fail either way.
It's going to fail either way. That's how you feel whenever Joe Biden talks about it. But that whole mess of 2 nights was just such an absolute waste. The first debate is just totally forgettable.
Honestly, we're not even covering it.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked a bit about the stupid first debate. The only thing was Warren did okay, and that was really the only highlight, because I can't even tell you anyone outside of
Beto O'Rourke Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, Beto O'Rourke and Cory Booker trying to Spanish rap. And other than that, there's really nothing.
Who was even... Julian Castro was in the first one.
Yeah, Julian Castro. And he made some weird...
He just made some radical statements.
He
That's
just
the
made
only
some
reason you're talking
stupid
about.
remarks is the only reason why he was even a thing. Marianne Williamson, the only reason that you talked about her is because she literally looked like that she smoked dope before she went up on the main stage.
Republicans are now legitimately donating to her campaign because they want her to meet the threshold for the rest of the debates.
It would be
They want her on the stage.
It would be entertaining, I'm not going to lie. So, that was Wednesday, Thursday last week.
Moving on from that pain.
Moving on, this is reporting from TheBlaze on Sunday. And the headline is, more brutal video of Portland Antifa event shows masked thugs with crowbars, bloodied victims, total anarchy. So, as we all know, I'll just read the story here. Since the assault and robbery of journalist Andy Ngo in Portland went national over the weekend, many more photos and videos from the Antifa protests that took place in the streets of the city have come out. This is only the latest of many such takeovers of the downtown area in Portland, events to which the mayor and even the police to a large extent have turned an utterly blind eye. So committed is the mayor to allowing anarchy to rule, in fact, that Senator Ted Cruz on Sunday called for an investigation and potential legal action against Democrat Mayor Ted Wheeler. And it goes on to say, and it gives you links and everything. We'll include that down in the description of videos, photos, everything like that has come out from this riot that occurred in Portland over the weekend. And I don't know how to describe it other than just total anarchy, because it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just and beating people.
They've been talking, people have been talking about how the media has given them almost their approval, and some have, but I honestly can't even understand how the media would support this. Not only because you had Andy Ngo get the crap beaten out of him, you've had far right-wing, far left-wing, centrist journalists from all over the spectrum have been assaulted by Antifa.
Yeah. So there was an older man, seemingly from, and this is from the story again, seemingly from the right politically, he was beaten bloody by Antifa, and the footage, which speaks for itself when it comes to the question of chaos on the streets of this modern American city, shows the man being hit in the face with a crowbar. Other people are punching him, punching other people, stealing backpacks as an utter riot atmosphere grips the crowd, which, that's why I say it's just chaos. There's really no other word for it. It's just absolute mayhem in Bedlam. The left joked and laughed about milkshakes being thrown at people, saying blah blah blah, Yeah. And it goes on to quote something from HuffPo, a tweet from HuffPo, just making light of, these milkshakes, which they put in quotes, which really is some sort of concoction mixed with quick dry cement. So, that's what these, milkshakes are. And as I mentioned, and this is from TownHall, Ted Cruz took to Twitter, and he called out the Portland mayor and just Portland as a whole for what happened, and he called for federal officials to investigate Ted Wheeler, who is the mayor, and called for them to investigate and take action against Ted Wheeler for his mishandling and his bungling of this, because turns out he told police to stand down, and it wasn't until the third attack on Andy Ngo that police finally responded and just went ahead and came to his aid, because he got attacked on multiple different separate occasions throughout all of that, and it wasn't until the third time that the police finally came to his aid and responded. But as it turns out, the police were told to stand down. So, and the group that was there is called the Proud Boys. And what
Boys with a Z, right?
But what they are is the Proud Boys, and what it is it's an all-male, some sort of extreme, fascist group or whatever.
Well, that's not very inclusive.
That was demonstrating in Portland, and so, Antifa comes up, and all that Antifa is really good for is just to stir crap. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Well,
that's all they're good for.
All that they are white pasty doughboys that live in their parents' basement and come
say,
out to see the light of day every few months.
Yeah. You know, these anti-fascists, you know, the communists and the fascists and everything. No, none of these groups are groups that anybody within reason identifies with in modern America, besides
losers.
Yeah, besides losers and besides those who are way off on the fringes, which is a very small number. But
pretty much the city of Portland.
Andy now has received a lot of attention since this. And you had quite a few people who had to go to the hospital because of injuries and everything. And I don't...
I mean, agree with people's politics or not, why would you allow this to happen?
Yeah, why?
Who wants to go to Portland now? You have a police force that's not going to respond if you're getting beaten by a angry mob?
Yeah. It's just total mishandling by the mayor. And I mean, this is the result whenever you try to placate these kind of things and try to downplay these types of groups because, they're anti-fascist, unlike, the fascist white supremacists, if that were the case, if you had, these white supremacist group out there, would have been out there in a heartbeat, would have been over and done with, because that's all these people focus on. They can't focus on anything outside of these white supremacist groups. That's their one track mind is white supremacists and fascists. But they don't look the other way at the extreme communists and the extreme revolutionaries for the left.
And these people, look at their numbers. It's literally 1% of the population versus the other 1% and the white supremacists and these anti-fascists.
If even 1%, it's lower than it's lower than Bill de Blasio's support numbers, to be quite honest. Of how many
registered KKK members
is less than 6,000.
Yeah.
In fact, let's be generous. It's less than 10,000. Yeah. Let's just say that those numbers are wrong. Let's be generous. Guaranteed less than 10,000 KKK members in the United States.
Out of 300.
Out of over
300 million.
Over 310 million.
We'll have the census.
Yes. And in fact, I mean, why not even just transition?
Did you see my transition there?
Let's just go ahead and transition into that. So last week, this is from the 27th. So this would have been on Thursday, last Thursday. And this is from the Daily Wire. Headline is, President Trump orders census delayed after Supreme Court rules it can't include citizenship question. President Donald Trump says he's ordered his attorneys to seek a delay in issuing the 2020 census after the Supreme Court ruled Thursday that the Trump administration may not be able to include a question about citizenship on the census. The president announced his decision to delay the census on Twitter, taking aim at the Supreme Court for its ridiculous decision, blocking the administration from inquiring, even anonymously, into the citizenship status of census takers. It seems totally ridiculous that our government and indeed country cannot ask a basic question of citizenship in a very expensive, detailed, and important census, in this case for 2020, Trump tweeted. I've asked the lawyers if they can delay the census no matter how long until the United States Supreme Court is given additional information from which it can make a final and decisive decision in this very critical matter. Can anyone really believe that as a great country, we are not able to ask whether or not someone is a citizen only in America? Which I think that sums it up pretty well. It's totally ridiculous to me that you can't ask whether or not somebody is a citizen of the nation whenever the population of states, of counties, of municipalities, etc., directly affects representation for your representatives in your state legislature and in the federal legislature, which affects electoral college votes. It's very important to get this correct. It is very important because it directly affects the whole electoral map. It directly affects the House of Representatives in Washington, and it affects your state legislature.
And who do you think's going to gain the most? Well, it's a toss-up between California or Texas, I guess.
I guess. But I don't understand how you can't ask if somebody is not a citizen. And basically, what the John Roberts wrote the decision on this, and essentially he didn't tell Trump no, but he essentially just didn't like his reasoning for it, and he didn't feel that it was good enough reasoning for it to be added. So they just punted it back to the lower court, which
that's nice of him.
Which will probably say no,
probably go to the
and then they'll have to, and then they'll probably appeal again,
it'll
and
be
then
back.
take it to the Supreme Court.
It'll be back next year.
It'll be back. It'll be back at some point. When? I don't know, because there's not really a good timeline for this.
Because the
And
next
that's
one
why,
won't be till 2030.
because the government had a self-declared guideline or deadline for the everything to be put on the census and everything like that, for it all to be done by some point here in the summer. They had their own deadline that they had marked for the census. And that's why Trump is now asking to see if there's any way to delay this, because it's obvious it will not be ready. It will not be ready in time. So the only other option is to just delay it until you get this figured out. I do not understand how this is a problem. I do not understand how this is such a debate among people.
It's racial profiling.
And that's the argument. Oh, it'll hurt minorities and everything. If you're a citizen and you're a minority, there's no problem.
Filling in
there's
the bubble
no problem.
Is too much work.
There's no issue if you're a minority. We're figuring out how many people are here legally as a citizen, so that we can see how this affects proceedings that citizens participate in. Elections. I don't understand how it's such this hard question. This hard question, because census, what is a census? It's a measurement of how many people, how many citizens, not just people, how many citizens are within your boundaries.
And why would an illegal immigrant go in to take the census?
It's not just a measurement of how many people are within your borders. It's a measurement of how many citizens are within your borders. You don't count people who are just here for vacation. They're not a citizen.
Well,
you don't count people who are here on work visas. They're not citizens. You count people who live here, who own property here, are citizens, have citizenship in America. Because that determines, like I said, everything. It affects the Electoral College. It affects the number of representatives, and it affects your state legislature.
How would this affect people, even if you are illegal? If you go in and take it, how easy is it for you to lie and put down a little yes bubble?
Exactly. I
don't condone that behavior.
I just don't understand. And I don't know how this is going to play out. I just don't. Here in the closing on this article, it says, there aren't a lot of things the government is required by the Constitution to do, but a census is one of them, and missing the census would be a severe abrogation of a central duty of the executive branch.
Delay the census until this is done.
So
there is no time limit on when you have to take it.
I don't know. I guess we'll see and we'll find out. I just do not. It makes absolutely no sense at all. Why? Why is this such a big deal? And John Roberts, his reasoning is basically I don't like your reason for it. You'll have to come up with something else. He didn't rule on the legality of it. He just didn't like the reasoning. All right, so speaking of judges, a federal judge blocked Trump from using $2.5 billion in military funds for the border wall. This is from the Washington Examiner, and this was a story from Saturday. And it reads, a California federal judge issued a ruling blocking President Trump from using $2.5 billion in military funds to build a wall along the southern border. The ruling by a U.S. District Court Judge Haywood Gilliam, who is an appointee of former President Barack Obama, ruled to permanently block the $2.5 billion after issuing a temporary injunction in May to stop the administration's use of the funds. The ruling stymies several construction projects in California, Arizona, and New Mexico. Gilliam ruled in 2 lawsuits on Friday, the first brought by the ACLU on behalf of the Sierra Club and the Southern Border Communities Coalition, came in response to Trump's national emergency declaration transferring $6.7 billion in military funds to border wall construction. Gilliam's decision halted the use of funds meant for Defense Department counter-drug activities. And it goes on, and Gilliam states in his decision that the position when Congress declines the executive's request to appropriate funds, the executive nonetheless may simply find a way to spend those funds without Congress does not square with fundamental separation of powers principles dating back to the earliest days of our republic. And it goes on, the Sierra Club loves it, but in Japan, Trump was in Japan whenever this came down, and he was asked about this whenever he was at the G20, and says, this is Trump's statement, he says that we're immediately appealing it and we think we'll win the appeal. There's no reason that should have happened. So,
Japan doesn't even allow immigration.
Yeah. And here we are, and Trump can't even get the funding for his border wall.
He could barely get funding to buy beds to put all the people in the southern border.
Yeah. And you couldn't get the funding for that. The Democrats blocked that funding.
And then Wayfair decided to walk out.
Yeah. The Democrats blocked that funding because they wanted not to have these facilities, because they want open borders. They just want these people to come in freely.
Yeah.
And now we're at the place where they're outraged about the condition of these facilities, and they're outraged that they don't have enough beds. But they didn't approve the funding for the beds.
Either you don't want any facilities there and you just want cotton candy stands and directional signs, or you want the facilities there to stop them.
Yeah. And the story closes here, and it says, Trump also threatened to re-engage his plan to crack down on illegal immigrants in the near future, saying, we will be removing large numbers of people starting in a week sometime after July 4th. Last weekend, Trump said he was delaying plans for federal officials to conduct mass raids to arrest illegal immigrants who violated deportation orders in order to give lawmakers 2 weeks to come up with agreement on immigration issues. Which I don't know if they did. The Democrats caved on the Senate bill. The Senate bill had passed some ridiculous number, 84-8 or something like that. It was some ridiculous number in the 80s to 8 opposition.
Well, they had to do something.
Went to the House. Nancy Pelosi had swore up and down that they weren't going to accept it. Then she did. Ocasio-Cortez came out and she was upset that they were doing it, even though that I believe she missed the vote herself.
Probably. I'm not sure.
So, she was so upset about it, and she missed the vote on even, opposing the thing.
Well, they don't want this on their plate. They went in the 4th of July recess last week for summer recess, so they don't want this left, so why not?
So, we'll see what happens here. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
The Democrats came and did something.
Why he can't use money here from the military to divert it to the border wall. I don't see why it matters what that money is used on, because the executive is the commander-in-chief of the military, and I don't see why it matters.
It's because it's
how that money is used.
Because it's the wall. It's a symbol of evil.
It's a dirty word. I mean, quite honestly, the wall is a dirty
Call it enhanced
word.
Fencing or something.
But
beautification of the southern border.
But it just, I just see flashbacks here to Obama, and it's just the blindness to some of this stuff. The idea and the position, blah, blah, blah. The executive, nonetheless, may simply find a way to spend those funds without Congress does not square with fundamental separation of powers principles. And what about the amnesty, the executive orders of Obama, and the just total disregard for the enforcement of the law and the Constitution that Obama took an oath to swore to uphold and protect? Without Congress, where was this then? It wasn't there.
Why don't we talk about that?
It wasn't there from this judge who, as I said, was an Obama appointee.
The Democrats taking the Constitution into their own hands with the Iran situation. You saw them try to pass a measure in the Senate to where any military action against Iran had to be approved by the Congress, which takes away the executive branch's right to be the commander-in-chief of the military.
Yeah.
They have the right to declare war, but there's the separation there.
Yeah. And you had a story, speaking of all this stuff of immigration, about Ocasio-Cortez.
The fun story just came out yesterday. Of course, Ocasio-Cortez and about a dozen of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus members went down to the border to see how violent and inhumane the El Paso border station was.
And before we get into this comes after there was, Ocasio-Cortez is very active on Twitter and on social media, and she put up a couple photos of herself in front of this fence where she was just devastatingly upset.
Her face was red.
Her face was all red. Her eyes are puffy. You can tell she's been crying. She's clutching her face with her hands, and she's in front of this chain link fence, and she said that she went down to view the conditions at these border facilities, and it just made her so upset. And it turns out that these photos were all staged in an empty parking lot. Not at a border facility, it was at an empty parking lot.
Who leaked that?
But we'll just preface that. We'll just preface the story with that fact about her handlings and her tactics on this topic. Anyway,
I wish we would have led with that story.
But we'll preface the story with that, and that with this topic and everything, that she's already had this come to light and come out. So pushing on while she was there, and after she went through the building and everything, she sent out tweets and made the statement that women and children are forced to drink out of toilets for water. DHS made the statement that they don't treat people that way. Former ICE Chairman Thomas Homan claimed that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is clearly and intentionally misleading the American public. Which isn't surprising. I mean, it's just great that DHS, comes out and says that. They just come out and flat out call her on the carpet for it. Any rational thinking person can surmise that this probably is not true. Almost definitely is not true. But it's just great that DHS just flat calls her bluff and just calls her out on it and just says this is a lie. This is absolutely not true.
Well, she was more eventful. According to the Washington Examiner, she was screaming at ICE agents and acting in a threatening manner.
Yes. And she herself, because this claim came from a tweet, in that she says that, I can only imagine, this is paraphrased, but, I can only imagine, what these ICE agents do, because while I was there, they were physically threatening and sexually threatening to me. And it's like, What?
Get off your high horse, AOC.
Sexually threatening to you. They know that a member of Congress who is just aching for an opportunity to just lambast and destroy any and all of these people who are working and enforcing law down at the border. They're just she's just aching for an opportunity. You really think that they're going to do stupid stuff?
Is that really what you think of law? And those are law enforcement officers. Is that really what you think that how they're going to act and behave?
Of course it does, because they slaughter African Americans and minorities for no apparent reason. Just for giggles.
Well, this was a great story from Fox where I got all this, and if you want, you should go look it up, because they have a photo of the toilet apparatus that she's talking about. I don't know if you saw it, but it's a small toilet.
I'll put it in here while you're talking.
It's maybe about 5-6 inches off the floor to where it has the toilet seat, and then it extends up 3-4 feet maybe to a sink, to where it's a toilet towards the bottom, and then it has a sink on top, and it has 2 water lines running into it. So it's connected as the same apparatus, but there's one water line running to the sink and one to the toilet.
And what was she claiming? That
she was claiming, I guess, that they both run to the same water line.
Yeah, that they were all on the same water line. So your toilet water is the same as the sink water, I guess.
You flush the toilet and that water comes through the sink.
I guess. I mean, that's the only thing. It's all
I'll show you the photo. We'll put the photo up. You'll understand it then.
So. I have a story here, and this is from yesterday, on Monday. This is from Reuters. And headline, Marchers Protest New York's Commercialized Pride Parade. And since we're into the month of July, we have now exited Pride Month, as we all know that June is. All of the social media accounts of corporations and brands are now going to have to take off their profile pictures, in which they were beautifully colorized with rainbows and the colors of red, yellow, orange, blue, indigo.
The pandering has ended.
All of them. The pandering has ended. And this is the caption. They have a picture here on the
boy, everything's commercialized.
Everything.
Days.
But this is the caption underneath the picture on the just underneath the headline. It says the Alternative Queer Liberation March in downtown Manhattan was designed to be a return to a people's political march without corporate sponsorship and police barricades. So,
did you know
this is from Hugo Greenhall from Reuters, and it says, chanting slogans of defiance, thousands of marchers took to the streets of New York City on Sunday to protest commercialization of the city's official Pride Parade, attended by millions of people a few blocks away. So you have thousands of people at this authentic Pride Parade, compared to the millions of people to the commercialized Pride Parade a little way away. The Alternative Queer Liberation March, that's what it's called, Queer Liberation March, in downtown Manhattan was designed to be a return to a people's political march without corporate sponsorship and police barricades, organizers said. The annual Pride March in New York has lost its radical roots and become commercialized with parade floats paid for by banks and beverage companies, said those of the alternative march dubbed Protest Pride.
Well,
a mobile communications company, T-Mobile, MasterCard Incorporated, and banking company HSBC were among the New York City Pride corporate sponsors.
Well, I can understand where they're coming from.
I don't.
Well, I can say, with MasterCard and everyone else, everybody buys a parade float and throws it in there to pander and act like we support gay pride and everything else. Who knows if they do? They're just
they do.
They're just buying a commercial float.
But yeah, no doubt that's what they do. They buy a float and they throw their support behind it because it's another group that they can, pander to, and that they can, try to coerce so that way they don't have any controversy involving this, because it's like, hey, we were in the New York City Pride Parade, for this group of people.
Yeah. At the same time,
I don't understand.
That's done at everything.
Their problem with these corporate sponsors, I thought that's what they wanted.
That's true.
I thought they wanted widespread support of their lifestyle and the way that they lived. I thought that was what they wanted. All across the land, they were so upset about their persecution. They still complain about how persecuted they are. Their persecution is people not agreeing with their lifestyle and wholeheartedly accepting it. But I thought that this is what they would want. These corporations, these national companies, international companies, MasterCard, Verizon, T-Mobile. Pick a company.
AT&T's probably in there.
Yeah, AT&T.
You can probably go on and on.
AT&T. Basically, pick any company. They're probably there. Pick Coca-Cola. They're almost definitely probably there.
The largest company in the world, Google.
Google is there. Microsoft. All these companies. Apple. I thought that this is what you wanted. But no, now you're complaining that it's become too corporate. It's not radical enough. It's too commercialized. It's too corporate. You have all these gosh dang corporations supporting us now. It's not what we wanted. Why? I don't understand. I don't understand the disconnect here. What really do you want then? Because I don't get it. You complained for so long about having to be in the closet and having to hide yourself. And now you have these pride parades. And you have all of these corporations throwing money and resources behind you. Behind your movement. And that's bad now all of a sudden? Because I guarantee you everyone would be ticked off if all of these companies would just pull their money out and pull their resources out and pull their support out. I mean, far more than would be happy about that. I don't understand what their argument is here. Because I guarantee that these people were probably jumping up and down, crapping their pants whenever these corporations started supporting them. No. But basically what it is it's just cool to be persecuted. Yeah. Now that gay people, by and large, now that LGBT and everything is...
It's more accepted.
It's chic. It's in.
It's more accepted than heterosexuality.
It's this mass accepted thing. They no longer have a basis for whining and complaining. They no longer have a basis for making the argument of mass persecution and having to be shoved in the closet. Because by and large, in American society, nobody cares. By and large in society, nobody cares. It's not an issue.
American and European society, it's completely accepted.
It's all but completely normalized at this point in Western society. So they have no more basis for complaining. So, what do? Well, now we're just too accepted.
You're being too nice to us.
Now we're being too accepted. We're not being persecuted anymore. We're being taken over by corporations.
I don't know what he means by police barricades. They have police barricades at every parade event.
I guess what he means is that they don't want an event that... They just want an event that's purely by the people. They don't want some organized event. They want an event that's just purely of the people, and it's not sponsored by any of these companies or has anything to do with these corporations. Well, but I mean, you have to remember that the parades and stuff and the events that this kind of stuff is funded by and presented by is the same people who continually complain about Wall Street and the big corporations, like Bernie Sanders.
Well, you're on public streets having a public parade, so the government's going to have to be involved in that. If I'm going to close down a street so I can march down it, don't you think that the police or somebody's going to be involved in that?
Yeah.
Or do you just want people running through there, running you over?
It's holding a sign that said "Revolting Lesbians." I don't know.
Well, this is...
Marcher Joe Macellaro said, "We're here today because we are tired of the police and corporations taking over Pride." I don't know what that means. We're here because we don't like police officers taking over Pride and corporations. They really offer no bigger explanation than that. But that's their position, and as to why they do not... why they had this parade. But
so the police are taking over Pride, and they're hunting down black people in the streets.
Yeah. They spent all this time fighting against society to get what they want. They got what they want. And now
even more in some cases.
Yeah.
I mean,
and now they're fighting against themselves. Because, you're not gay enough is essentially what they're saying. You're just bought out by the corporations and the police. Somehow the police have a vested interest in this. You're not truly gay. Okay? It's kind of like, honestly, this is like what happens in the African American community, to where you have black conservatives like Candace Owens, to where they're called, horrible names, Uncle Toms and the rest. But
that was a good book.
And they, say essentially, you're not really black. You're not really part of the black community. That's kind of what's going on here. You're not really gay. You're not really a part of the gay community. You're just bought out. You're just a shill for the corporations. You're just a shill for the police and everything. That's basically what they're saying now. They fought so long that they just like conflict. They feel like that they constantly have to fight against someone because someone is always oppressing them. And in this case, it's their own community oppressing them. It's their own community that they have to fight against because they're not really fighting the true gay fight, because the gay fight is never won. The gay fight is always a fight that has to be fought.
It's the plot twist we've all been waiting for.
You always have to fight for your gay rights.
Sounds like a song.
But with that, we will come to our final segment that we always do, and that's called Dots and Dashes. And it's where me and Logan bring a story that's a little more lighthearted. It's a little different than just our typical topics that we talk about. And we bring just a more lighthearted story for you to close out the week, or to close out the broadcast and to send you into the week until our next broadcast and the next time that we join you. So with that, bring you Dots and Dashes.
Alright, welcome into Dots and Dashes. So I found a fun little story. Everyone's favorite Democratic presidential candidate,
The most well-known candidate.
yes, Bill de Blasio, was scheduled for an interview Tuesday morning. And it was scheduled for 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. He did not even leave his home until 8 a.m. Eventually, he showed up there. I think it was somewhere between 8:30 and 9. He eventually showed up for the interview. It was supposed to be live on air, on radio. So he eventually arrived, and he explained that he had misset his alarm clock, which led to this. He's notorious for being late for interviews. In 2014, a reporter gave him an alarm clock as a joke because he was late for multiple of the interviews between him and that reporter.
I mean, that's just the lamest. That's an excuse that you...
As a middle school excuse.
Yeah, that's just the most middle school thing that I've ever seen in my life. And Democrats just seem to be notorious for being late for things. I can remember I can't probably count on one hand how many times Obama was on time for a press conference.
Even State of the Unions, he was late for.
Even State of the Unions, he was still late for. He's always late for everything he ever did. And not by a small margin either. It would legitimately be sometimes 40, 45 minutes, over an hour. He would be late for rallies, for speeches, anything.
The amount of TV shows that could have actually happened, but instead they were sitting there waiting.
They were sitting there waiting on deck for them to just go to the feet of the president. Wasted so many broadcast hours over the course of the 8 years.
To Trump's credit, he's on time a lot.
Sometimes
he even comes up early.
Yeah. Most of the time, Trump is usually pretty on time with his stuff. So, my story is one from Fox News. A Florida man is arrested.
Not another Florida man.
Yeah, I know this sounds like a meme, but Florida man is arrested after pelting girlfriend with McDonald's sweet and sour packets. Now, I don't mean to be getting on the McDonald's train here. You just did my...
What's up with you and fast food gone bad?
Yeah. But Florida man pelted his girlfriend in the head and face area, this is in quotes, with sweet and sour sauce packets Sunday because he was angry. She bought the wrong food from McDonald's. A felony battery complaint said. Jesus Oscar Ferrer Jr., age 30, attacked his girlfriend with whom he has a child in the couple's motel room in Tampa, police said. A struggle ensued, and Ferrer allegedly pinned his girlfriend to the ground. He placed his palm on her face and pressed her head into the ground using his body weight, which prompted the woman to rip off part of his beard, rather. By the time officers arrived, Ferrer had fled the motel. According to the complaint, he was arrested and booked into the Pasco County Jail on a charge of felony battery.
Okay, so I thought at first that he just threw the packets at her and got battery assault. He did assault her to a degree.
He did assault her, but he also threw the sweet and sour packets in her face. And I'll give Fox News credit for constructing an intriguing headline here.
Wow. It seems as though I need to start going to the food and drink section when I'm looking for this segment stories.
Because
I'm striking out a lot of other places.
There's so many of these stories that come from people getting agitated whenever they're at fast food establishments or just in any place that serves food and beverage in general. It's kind of amazing how many of these stories that happen. People just have no tolerance and just a very short temper whenever they're trying to get their food or drink or anything.
I don't understand it. This is a new issue, in all honesty. Or maybe it's
an epidemic.
Or maybe it's because of the wider media reach that we have now. Maybe this has been happening all throughout history.
Maybe this has been happening all of our lives, and we just never known about it. Because nobody's ever reported on it.
Of course, I mean, you hear about this so much, you think that I should have seen this live and in person. You think that if I go down to the McDonald's, I'm going to see some guy tase someone else.
Yeah.
But I've never seen
something.
I've never seen something.
I've never seen it. It just seems to be stuff that happens everywhere else.
It's the Midwest. It's the Midwest hospitality.
I guess
we're too nice here.
So we want to thank you all for joining us on this edition of the WireTap in whatever way you might on YouTube, SoundCloud. If you're watching us or listening to us on the one, go to the other. And, you can enjoy it however you want. If you're watching us on YouTube, go to SoundCloud, download it, listen to it on the go. If you're on SoundCloud, go to YouTube, see what we actually look like. See us in our little bunker here as we broadcast. And make sure, if you want to get in contact with us, if you want to see more of our content all throughout the week, to give us a follow on Twitter. We're at the C-Wire on Twitter. Again, at the C-Wire, capital C, W, and T. TC and W. Capital TC and W. At the C-Wire on Twitter. And we want to thank you all for all your support and for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you want to look at the stories that we did today, you can look at them down in the description. Like, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff and social media stuff that everyone begs you for. And we will see you guys next episode.